today's meeting. Can I please ask to ensure that your phones are switched off for the duration of the meeting, please? And those members joining us at home, it's a legal obligation to have your cameras switched on. Also, if you wish to raise a question, please put your electronic hand up on the screen, and those in the room, raise your physical hand. Thank you. We're not due a fire drill, so if you do see us up and leaving the room, apologies. We will try and come back as quickly as possible. We're going to now do apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Aubrey and Councillor Goldsworthy for today's meeting. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, which are declarations of interest. Members, do we have any declaration of interest today, please? I see the screen in the room. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, to the revenue budget proposals 2026 to 2027. These can be found in your agenda packs at pages 3 to 38. Officers, do you have anything further to add to the report, please?
No, nothing to add, Chair. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions, please? We have one in the room from Councillor Wood. So we'll go with Councillor Wood first, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, mine's on ENV 13, which is on Appendix 4, which deals with an increase in the bulk waste collection price from £29.50 to £39.50, which represents a 25% increase in that charge. I believe this would be a false economy because it would probably lead to an increase in fly tipping, push people to use illegal waste carriers because they'd probably be easily to get under that sort of price. And there'll also be a potential drop-off in the service as it would have risen so high. And looking at some other local authorities near us, Swansea, for example, charged £24 for 1 to 3 items, and double that then for the higher amount of items. Rhondda Cynon is £22. So I think putting it up to £39.50 is quite excessive for between 1 to 7 items. What I'd rather see is a lowering of the cost of picking up the bulk items down to about £24 or thereabouts, and whereby people could have 1 to 3 items taken away. Because if you've got a white goods appliance, or particularly a fridge, which is difficult to get rid of, perhaps you don't want to be paying £39.50 to get rid of 1 item. Whereas, there are unscrupulous people who may take that item away for lower than what we are charging, and it could end up as fly tipping. We could maintain a £39 fee for 7 items. That could be, used, but I would propose that we introduce a smaller fee for less amount of items. The private sector, for example, you can get goods taken away for £15. So, I would suggest that we look at this, and what I suggest to the chair is that he write a letter to Cabinet as chair of the committee, asking that this line be taken out, and a further report sent to the Visual Services and Street Scene Committee with further recommendations or options for that committee to recommend to Cabinet that officers could prepare for that committee. That's what I'd like to see anyway. I don't know if, that's what I'd like to propose. I don't know if anybody would want to second that proposal.
I'm happy to second that with you, Councillor Woods. So we get a letter drafted. Yeah, okay. Nicola Pearce, do you want to come back in to respond?
Yeah, if I can respond to the to Councillor Wood's comments first, if I may. Just for members' benefits, obviously the proposals have been put forward to enable us to balance the budget going forward without having to cut services that we're currently delivering. And we put a range of proposed increases to fees and charges across the directorate. We did benchmark them against other authorities, and the proposed charge that we are suggesting to members, which is a £10 flat rate increase, £10 increase to the flat rate, would still mean that when the other authorities also increase their charges, we will still be the third lowest charge in Wales in terms of the bulky waste charges that we are suggesting members consider. Now, previously, we did have a two-tier system in place where we had a charge for, I can't remember how many it was, but we had a charge for one or a small number of items, and then we had a different charge for a larger number of items to be disposed of. And we had a huge number of complaints because people were creative in terms of how they were describing items. So we had, sort of, for example, a table and 4 chairs put out, and they were considering that to be one item. And our service were considering that to be 4 items. So what was happening was our operatives were going out and collecting the bulky waste and leaving waste behind on the pavement because they had exceeded the number of items that they'd paid for to be collected. Now, quite understandably, that resulted in complaints coming in from the public. And we were having to go back and forth, and potentially the member of the public was having to pay another fee for another collection. So it did cause a lot of time going back and forth, and it caused a lot of uncertainty for the public. And as I say, it did cause a lot of angst. And the amount of wasted time in terms of officer time going back and forth, and the cost of those multiple trips to the site, to the property, was quite significant, not only in terms of fuel costs, but in terms of carbon impact, etc. And we are, trying to reduce our carbon footprint as an organisation. Now, we introduced the 7 items, one price for 7 item system a long time ago to try and address all those concerns at the time. And it has been successful because the members of the public know that they can put up to 7 items out there, and they can, and our guys will, our operatives will go and they will collect it. As I say, we're still the 3rd lowest service in Wales. And it has been effective. Now, if members of the public want to use an authorised carrier, waste carrier, if they consider that they have only got 1 item and it's cheaper to use an authorised carrier, then they're well within their rights to do so. They can also arrange to take it to the Household Waste Recycling Centre free of charge as well. Now, what we've also have to have regard to is we have a budget pressure within the waste service. The prices that we're having to pay for off-takers to take our waste and to deal with it is going up, and we have no control over that. And it is a pressure that has been identified for some time. So we have to undertake sort of measures or implement measures to try and manage that increase in cost. Now, if we introduced a 2-tier system, the likelihood is that we would have, and that would be at a lower cost. For the larger number of items, we would probably have to increase it more than £10 because we have to secure income to offset the cost of delivering the waste service. So there would be winners and losers in the process. Now, at the moment, we're collecting about 6,000 bulky waste collections per year. Now, 4,000 of them are for 4 or 7, up to between 4 and 7 items. So we've got data in the system to demonstrate that 4,000 of the 6,000 bulky waste collections we undertake each year are for 4 to 7 items. On top of that, I know that you raised the issue about fly tipping and illegal waste carriers. Now, our Trade and Standards officers undertake regular operations with NRW. We've also got waste responsibilities and with the police, and they do random checks on vehicles, stopping them, and they have seized vehicles when they haven't got the appropriate licenses in place and so on, and it is evident that they are illegally collecting material and then potentially illegally dumping material. We've also got an exemplary track record in terms of tackling fly tipping, where we take people to court, we will investigate the perpetrator, and we will take them to court. And you will probably have seen on social media, we make a point of highlighting the successful stories we've had in the courts where people have been prosecuted and they've had significant fines imposed upon them. So as I say, we have got a very good record in relation to that. As I say, we have benchmarked all of our prices, and we're fairly comfortable that we're still one of the cheapest collection services in Wales in terms of bulky waste. If there's anything further members want to ask, I'll try and do my best to answer.
Thank you, Nicola.
Can I come back? Yeah, I mean, I think what's going to cause angst is the extra £10 on bulky waste collections. It means effectively that if somebody, especially that couldn't go to the tip themselves, wanted to get rid of, say, a small larder fridge, they're spending £100 for a new fridge and then £40 to get rid of the old one. I mean, for one item, I think we could put this to the Scrutiny Committee with a choice of options, and that Scrutiny Committee then could put forward the recommended one from the members to decide which way we want to go on it. I know you've given a lot of data there and you've given quite a comprehensive answer, but ultimately we are there to represent the people of the county borough as councillors. We should decide on whether or not we want a two-tier system, and we should decide on whether or not that is more cost effective for the people of the county borough. Just my thoughts on it. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor, thank you.
Am I able to come back, Chair, in relation to that one item issue? Sorry, I'm not wishing to leave. Oh, sorry. Was that okay? Sorry, yeah, okay, thank you. Not wishing to prolong the discussion on this particular point, because I'm sure there's lots of questions, but in terms, a lot of retailers today, when you are buying a product from a retailer, whether it be a fridge, freezer or another item, they will give you the ability to pay for them to take your existing white goods piece away. I'm not sure what the charges are, but there are those options as well where you can pay to have your old piece of equipment disposed of responsibly. So there is that option. As I've indicated, a two-tier system is likely to get us back to the position we had before, where we had a lot of confusion, complaints, and disgruntled members of the public. And this service has been working quite effectively for some time. I do appreciate the £10 increase proposed is going to be significant for some people, but we are still going to be the third lowest in Wales, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Nicola. We're going to bring Craig in to come in for some legal advice here on today's questions, for us to sort of amalgamate them and just put a letter in of everything we're discussing.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, Chair, is I'm conscious of the fact that obviously the Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee today are going to have a number of different topics they're going to probably want to raise on different matters. There's going to be very different views maybe that come out of different aspects, and I think it's important that we have a document that encapsulates all of the views, irrespective where one may be supported, one may be not. So everything that the committee have said is reported ultimately back to the Cabinet. So rather than have to look at individual recommendations ultimately coming through each one, I'm wondering whether what members would be comfortable with is the Chair writes a letter setting out all of the discussions that have been had here today, whether some have been positive, whether some have been negative, and then that gets presented to the Cabinet so they can see the collective views of scrutiny today. In that sense, it seems to be a cleaner way ultimately to make sure that everyone's views can be taken into account.
Thank you for that, Craig. We all okay with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kate. We're going to move on to Councillor Sarah Thomas next then, please.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. I'm going to do them one at a time, if that's all right, because I've got ADHD. I get distracted. So the first one really is, can I just confirm, is this the only committee that is scrutinising the budget this year? Because usually, certainly last year, it went to all the scrutiny committees. Can I just have some confirmation and explanation on that?
Thank you, Sarah, for the question. We'll bring Craig back in.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we changed, obviously, when we looked at the scrutiny model last year, Councillor Thomas, is that we've dedicated Performance and Resources Committee as the dedicated scrutiny committee, ultimately to look at the budgetary elements associated with the proposals. Obviously, the chairs and vice chairs of the chairs of the individual scrutiny committees also sit on this committee as well. So if there are proposals ultimately where they think there needs to be a deep dive discussion or whatever the case may be, then there are avenues ultimately where they can ask for certain information to come forward, as Councillor Wood has just raised, obviously in respect of visual services. But the dedicated scrutiny committee now for budgetary matters is Performance and Resources.
Okay, thank you for that. So my first proper question then is, it's on Appendix 3, so it says waste. Due to market conditions, the cost per tonne for residual waste disposal has increased. Could I have an explanation of what that is? Like, I was under the impression we sort of incinerate most of our residual waste, and like, is that costing more money, or?
We've got different waste carriers, and we always try to secure a mix of different carriers to remove our waste. And yes, you are right, it does, some of it goes off to incineration and some of it goes off to landfill, but we have no control, and we obviously have to pay those organisations to take our material, and that cost is going up quite significantly year on year.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is on Appendix 4. So it's EL and LL 3 and 4. Both of these are looking at income generation from indoor leisure. So my understanding is that would normally go to Celtic Leisure. I'm just a bit confused about how we're benefiting from it. Could I have an explanation on that, please?
Chair.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I think Andrew's going to answer. Question, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Andrew, come in first, then we come back to here in the room, okay?
Yeah, sorry, Sarah, can you repeat which appendix line it is, please?
It was Appendix 4, and it's EL and LL 3 and 4, and it's on page 25 of the report, if that helps.
Yeah. The right, yeah, that's fine. The certainly the EL3 is, we will be asking Celtic Leisure. So that is a saving that will be generated from a lower management fee that we will give to Celtic on the basis that they will lower their cost base and increase their customer numbers and therefore increase their revenue. Therefore, they won't need the £100,000 in the management fee. And that's an agreement we had when we set the contract with them. They knew that we would be building efficiencies into their contract year on year. The second one is very much it's a tax issue. It's a tax benefit in terms of just doing an agency agreement. It's quite complex. We've taken legal advice around it. It just changes the arrangement that we have around our income generation and taxation model. It's entirely legal, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be putting it forward. But that is basically a taxation saving around the way we will contract with Celtic Leisure going forward. Craig may, and is probably better placed to talk about the legal sort of aspect of that. But certainly the first one is in terms of cost reduction and income generation, and we will give a smaller, lower management fee to Celtic going forward than we currently do. So that's how we benefit.
On the tax one, so as I understand it, Celtic Leisure would be paying that. So we're just, again, reducing our management fee to them because they're getting a better tax rate. Is that what you're saying?
It's a little bit like that. There's no detriment to Celtic Leisure whatsoever in that arrangement. It's purely a tax efficiency model in terms of the way that legal agreement is structured. Craig, I don't know if you're able to explain more around that tax benefit.
I'm going to pass over to Hugh in the first instance, if that's okay. Councillor Thomas, and then I'll go in the end.
So I was just going to,
for the game on the Sunday.
just going to direct Councillor Thomas to the Cabinet papers for yesterday, which include all the detail around that proposal and all of the intricacies and the fine details. So probably if you wanted to peruse those, then and come back with any other questions. But as Andrew said, it's a more tax efficient model for Celtic, which means we can reduce our management fee and no detriment to the way they trade.
And if I could just add, Chair, as well, it doesn't actually change the nature of the contract ultimately that we currently have with Celtic Leisure. It's a continuation of the exact same arrangements. It's just some small tweaks and variations to make sure that we can implement the new model, which a lot of leisure trusts at the moment are ultimately going on throughout the country at this stage. So it's a technical change to the nature of the arrangement without anything substantive in that position.
Lovely. Thank you, Andrew, Craig and Hugh. Councillor Thomas, do you want to come back?
Not on that. I do have my final question. No, you'll be pleased to hear. So on page 29, under Appendix 4, it's under S and CS 4. So there's talk about developing a support system for providing legal advice to town and community councils and actively promoting it. Obviously, I am a clerk, so I have some awareness of this, and I frequently come to certain officers to get help with that. Are we talking about charging our community councils for that service? And if we are, then I feel it's a little unfair because they've already set their precepts for this year, and obviously they haven't budgeted this in, and I worry that this is going to have a really negative effect on the lowest level of local government, and I'd really like a bit more information about that, please.
Yep, so this one is for me, Councillor Thomas. So no, we're not looking to charge in that sense for it. So over the last couple of years, we've been getting historic requests sometimes from town and community councils that they'd like support, maybe where they're entering into a new lease as opposed to a building, or they've got something bespoke ultimately they're going to be embarking on. And our insurance arrangements have such prevented the legal section ultimately undertaking the work for those authorities when those requests are made. So I've spoken to our insurers and we're looking to change the nature of the arrangement. So rather than local town councils having to go to external solicitors, in that sense, they are welcome actually to approach myself now, and the legal team in NPT will be able to undertake that work. So it's not changing the nature of the arrangements of any services that are being provided at the moment. It's just an added extra which we'll be in a position to provide if town and community councils want to take up that offer of service, because obviously we've got experience in undertaking local government related work, so we're aware of some of the intricacies ultimately that conveyancing work or employment matters or legal advice ultimately that is ultimately needed in various ways. So if you need something that is more substantive than just a discussion ultimately with myself, as we do in your capacity as clerk every now and then, we've got the ability to be able to provide that at a much more competitive rate in that sense as well. So it's about introducing that model in the hope that people may want to take advantage of that service if and when down the line.
Thank you very much. That's it from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So, Councillor Pearce, if you would come to yourself, I got two nominations to speak in the room. We're going to go to Councillor Reynolds next, please, and then Councillor Wolford, and then yourself. Is that okay?
I wanted to follow up, if I may. I've got other questions that I'll follow on from others on, but I wanted to follow up on the issue of this being the only committee. It is incidental that this committee has the chairs on it of those other scrutiny committees, because it's a decision of the various groups as to who attends. So I am concerned that we lose out a considerable level of expertise and knowledge. Some of us in the room don't have knowledge of, you know, the various aspects of that. We may be financially aware, we don't know the realities of the departments. And I think not going to the other scrutiny committees is a negative development. And it's not something that was clear in terms of the setting of the budget when we did the rearrangement of scrutiny committees. And I think we need to be absolutely clear about that, and we need to make that, you know, I have real concerns about lack of scrutiny. And I'm also aware that the council had indicated in a Wales Audit Office report that it was not enabling enough information for true, you know, scrutiny in the democratic process last year. That went to governance and audit, and that concerns me. And this, I think, is, you know, is not something that they would look well on. So I would like to see the budget go to the other scrutiny committees, even if they don't really ask that much. At least we ought to be putting it forward at this stage, at least. So, and having said that, I wanted to forgotten the other thing I was going to say, moving forward, but it was, oh yes, the document about Celtic leisure. I know that education scrutiny, I suspect, I'm just having come back from leave, I suspect that Cabinet's decision last week was based around that document, and that went to Cabinet last week. And it was indicated there that scrutiny didn't want to look at this document. I was away, so it's quite possible that, you know, it would have been good to see, and it's just good to try and understand and ask questions on. So could it be circulated to the members of this committee?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Is any other questions? Sorry.
I've got other questions later, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Woolford next, and then we come to you, Sean. Okay.
Carl, my question isn't in relation to what we've just been discussing now, so if you want to leave it, maybe Dawn's is, I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to you then. Bob. Councillor Percy then, please.
Yeah, Diolch, no, thank you. Yeah, I've got a number of questions, if that's okay. So just to start, in terms of a comment, I suppose, page 19 reference there to Abraham Seafront and investment there. I have to welcome that as a local member and someone who's lobbied very hard for this arrangement. So I am looking forward to working with officers on that going forward. But I just wanted to make a point of that. In terms of questions, on page 20, there's a line around building maintenance. Again, we've discussed this elsewhere, and it is very welcome to see that extra funding being put in. I wondered if Hugh could just clarify what the total budget now is, because that, I believe, is the additional budget that's going in there. And I've got another question just on the same page, Chair, which is in relation to countryside and biodiversity. There's additional investment in staffing and maintenance. So we got a breakdown of that £200,000 figure in terms of new staff roles, maintenance budget. It would be interesting, I think, just to have that. And apologies for not sending my questions over in advance, Chair, after missing the pre-brief yesterday. I'll have one other question after these.
Yeah. So in terms of building maintenance, as you say, that's the gap between what we spend and the funding available. I don't know off the top of my head the total building maintenance budget for the council, but again, I can circulate that around to committee members afterwards. And likewise, I'm sorry, with the 200k, I will get a schedule of the actual staffing and how much is for maintenance as well circulated, whether the actual specific job roles have been developed yet, because obviously until this budget is agreed, then that funding isn't available. But certainly when it was brought forward, there was an idea as to how many people it should encompass and the type of work as well, Sean. So I get that circulated as well.
Thank you, Hugh. Sean, we got Nicola Pierce has indicated to speak, so I bring Nicola in.
Yeah. I was just gonna add on the countryside and biodiversity question. There was a request for additional support in that service because lots of communities rely on our right-of-way network, whether it be for pleasure or for commuting, because we've got some urban fringe right-of-way as well as those in the countryside, and we have a staff. One team of 2 individuals covering all of the rights of way across the entire network, and I don't know what the length of our network is off the top of my head, but it's bigger than you would probably guess. It's quite significant. And every year we've cut in terms of salami slicing that budget, and it's whittled away to nothing. So the £200,000 is effectively going to put another team of 2 individuals in, plus the plant and equipment and vehicle that they need, and it can also contribute towards any weed sprays and that type of stuff that they will be reliant upon to undertake their responsibilities. In terms of the biodiversity side of things, I think there was a suggestion that we are translocating a lot of habitat and species from several different sites within the county borough to enable developments to take place without undermining the biodiversity that we have within our authority. And that is a system that is operated nationally. What we don't have is a resource to manage those translocated sites to make sure that they're maintained and enhanced going forward. So it was suggested that there would be a resource in place to manage our translocated sites to ensure that they kept healthy going forward, and that we don't have a detrimental impact upon ecology as a consequence of any translocation activities linked to regeneration within the county borough. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of what that fund will pay for. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Percy, are you happy with the response?
Yeah, I've got an additional question as well, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Nicola. A very detailed explanation there, and I think that is going to be a positive around the rights of way. So my next question is in relation to page 27 on Appendix 4, and it's around the operating subsidy for the metal box premises in Neath. I know we've this has been discussed in scrutiny previously. I'm just wondering if we feel like we're on track and that's achievable, because it's worded as a target aimed, and I'm wondering if that's actually likely to go ahead. Diolch.
Shall I come in, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Nicola, you got to answer that? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Come in.
Thank you. Yes, we've been trying to work hard behind the scenes for some time to get business cases in place to secure sufficient funding to undertake works within the metal box to subdivide it into smaller units, because we had a lot of demand for smaller industrial units and we had a huge space which was vacant within the metal box. So that fund was secured, or that funding was secured through the Tata Transition Fund after a successful business case was submitted, and work is currently underway within the metal box at the moment. So contractors are on site and they're subdividing the building at the moment. So once that subdivision is in place and we let those units, then that will hopefully remove that sort of pressure which we've got within the budget, and hopefully we'll move to a profitable situation going forward rather than us having to subsidise that building. But we're all on track and work is going well in the building.
Thank you, Nicola. We're now going to go through Councillor Wolford in the room.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's only a small one. Appendix 4, ENV 15 is the increase in sustainable drainage staff preliminary fees. Could we have included in the report what they are now and what they're going to be increased to? I only say that because it's quite a common question now when we have inquiries about planning, because SAB is so prevalent that people are asking these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can do that for the final report.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Right, on Appendix 3, the first I've got printed out, so I haven't got page numbers, my apologies. But it's the first item under environment. Sorry, Nicola. It's more detail on that, please. We've got staff that were funded by grants. What work is that involving? What's the what will they be doing in the future, or is the grants, is the work still ongoing despite the lack of grants, etc.?
Sorry, I was trying to go through all the different lines then. Are you talking about the 850,000?
850, yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, so we're on page 20 of the report then, or of the appendix. Yes, when the Shared Prosperity Fund was initially introduced, we had a number of staff who were moved from core budget to be funded from the Shared Prosperity Fund. And that was a way to try and secure savings many years ago when it was originally introduced. Now, there were concerns, quite understandably, from me and staff within our directorate that we were moving people from permanent, fully funded posts into grant-funded posts. And we had an assurance at the time from the then Chief Exec that that funding would be put back into our base budget so that when the grant ended, that those staff were able to move back to their permanent posts without any detriment to the Environment Directorate budget. So that's what that £850,000 relates to. So that was the funding that was taken out of our budget because those posts were paid for by Shared Prosperity Fund at that time.
Thank you. If I may carry on there. Again, on the building maintenance on that page, it's what we're looking at there is the costs exceeding. Are we now, because it became clear a year or more ago, that we weren't enforcing lease conditions for buildings that we own, and that was costing us money? That came to light over the Cross situation in Pontardawe, etc. So are we now enforcing conditions for maintenance in the lease so that the council doesn't end up with residual costs?
I think these are two different issues. What the building maintenance line now, which is for £330,000, that reflects a budget pressure that we have experienced for a number of years. So every year we are undertaking testing of our buildings and the kit within our buildings, and undertaking sort of repairs to those buildings, which are becoming more and more expensive year on year. We had to cut to that budget a number of years ago when we were unable to meet our savings targets. So the money that we've had within that service has over time decreased, but the cost of managing our assets has increased. And what we're finding is that whereas in years and years gone by, we went into emergency works only mode, as you got towards the end of the financial year when the funds were drying up within the budget, what we're finding now is that we're more or less in emergency mode from April onwards. So we're constantly in emergency mode, and we are in a position every year where we are finding that we've got a pressure within the building service budget because the number of buildings that we've got, the age of those buildings, which are becoming old and therefore older, and therefore they're was it the structural integrity, etc., is becoming worse. It's costing us far more money to manage those assets, and the budget that has been set aside to cover those costs was found to be inadequate. So we have been lobbying Hugh and others to try and get an increase in that building maintenance budget, because it is not reflecting the age of our building stock and the increasing costs of testing and maintaining those buildings.
I just wonder whether you wanted to touch base on the question about the leasehold, Nicola, and what the estates team are doing to make sure that we are ensuring the tenants meet their obligations as well.
Yeah, we are obviously trying to ensure that they are in accordance with the lease arrangements that they have they have signed up to. We are aware, especially in relation to some sort of community assets where there were buildings that were previously owned by the council and they've been transferred to community companies within the community, or that perhaps they're not able to undertake those maintenance liabilities, or they're choosing not to. And we know that those buildings are falling into a poorer and poorer state of repair. And we were actually talking about that this morning, about whether or not there was some support that could be provided from some fund, albeit we haven't identified where that fund is at the moment, to try and ensure that those community assets are maintained, albeit the responsibility of the person who has entered into the lease. But we are not, we know that some of those companies or organisations who are managing those assets will walk away at one point in time unless we can help them to manage those buildings, and that is not a risk that we really want to carry. And we also understand that those communities are reliant on some of those community buildings, as a lot of activities take place in those community buildings. So it's something that we need to look into further, because as I say, we don't want to lose those buildings which are within the heart of those communities.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Nicola. That was what I was trying to get to, because I was aware that that was an ongoing problem that was increasing year on year, I think, for us and organisations, and impacted on communities. I was then looking at Appendix 4, ELL6, Lifelong Loan 6, on the first page of Appendix 4. I was, we're cutting the, we're dropping the cost of the school's food budgets there. And I have a concern that we're, as to whether we're doing that with no impact on quality, and whether we're considering, the right quantities of fresh foods, etc., and whether it's locally sourced in terms of supporting our own economy and working with our local food networks and our own local food network.
Andrew's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to, well, who's the other? Who do you want to go or do you want me to do it?
Oh, sorry, Andrew. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see on the screen who's got their hands on. Glasses on and off. Yeah, there you
Right,
are.
okay. Councillor Rance, we've been operating of the universal free school meals for some years, and the amount of money we get from Welsh Government, we are confident that we can take that £60,000 out of food purchases without any detrimental impact on both the quantity or the quality of the meal offered to our young people. So there's no risk around that.
Are we considering locally sourced? Are we looking to work with local producers on this? Because I do have concerns that this is about, there's quite a lot of money being spent within our local economy, if possible.
I'll have to get back to you on that. I do know that the some of the benefits that we get in terms of cost reductions are around the All Wales purchasing sort of facility, which obviously reduces the cost to us. So I don't know how much of the produce is sourced locally, but I can certainly find that out and share that with the members of the committee. Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Councillor Wells. And you have to declare an interest there. My wife is a school cook in Cronall School, so I did have to declare an interest then. But yeah, I know that Castell Howell does supply a lot of food to us, and Dyson Slice in Pontardawe, two big suppliers for fresh foods and feeds to us. Thank you.
They don't necessarily source locals.
Indeed, if I can come in, Chair, in that sense, obviously we do have a lot of procurement arrangements, obviously in respect of food, where there are obligations in respect of local supply chains and lots of different elements associated with this. So if I can't go into the specifics about where things are sourced, there are lots of different national frameworks which we sign up to, which have commitments about locally based supply chains, because they come from some of the Welsh Government and what used to be the National Procurement Service. We put some arrangements together. So there are numerous different arrangements that are in place. As I said, without going into the specifics, no doubt we can find that information and circulate it to the committee, and it might be something that individual scrutiny committees maybe want to look at as part of their own work programmes in that sense going forward. We've talked about some procurement aspects being considered ultimately within this particular committee. Once we can refine obviously different options going forward, any individual scrutiny committees can pick up matters that could be of particular relevance to them if we want to look at SME involvement, supply chains and those areas as well.
If I may, yeah, I think it is relevant to this budget discussion, because if we're looking at taking money out of that, then we are, would it be better spent sourcing locally and having a greater cost benefit in the economy as a whole? So there's those sorts of equations we need to consider when we're considering our budget as a council, I believe.
If I could just come in to that point, it also comes into our climate emergency of being greener and low carbon. We don't want to be sourcing food from further away if we can get it closer.
Yeah, agreed. Councillor Percy, is that a legacy hand you have up?
No, I wanted to just add a brief comment part of the discussion, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was just in relation to the community assets point that was raised, and it was actually something I was having a conversation with some officers about in the last few weeks. We're coming up to 14, 15 years where we had a big tranche of leases on these buildings, and it is quite reassuring to hear Nicola say that this is on the agenda, because I flagged a few of these issues up with officers recently from a risk point of view for the organisation, because Nicola's quite right. When these leases do end, or if people hand them back, it's our liability to deal with those issues. And I just wanted to make the point that we don't have up-to-date condition reports on these buildings, and we ought to probably make an effort to put a bit of resource into doing that, so we can understand the scale of the risk. Given that, as I said, we're approaching now, a big tranche went out 14 years ago, and I know across the county there's issues in terms of how those buildings have been maintained. And one in my ward, we didn't even have a floor plan for the building that's leased out. So we're really behind in terms of understanding these assets. But I just wanted to make that point as part of this discussion, Chair, and I'm sure in due course there'll be some lines popping up in the budget to deal with that risk as well. Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy, for observations. All noted. That is thank you. Councillor Reynolds, do you have anything to add?
I have a few further points of clarification. Mostly education. Andrew, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the item EL9, the removal of core budget for specialist ALN education equipment for schools. I just, I'd like a bit more information on that. I'm not sure I understand the description and what the implications of that is. Linked to grant funding, and similarly for some other items going down. It's clarification really I'm looking for as to what the implications would be, particularly over time.
If we deal them, yeah, thank you, Chair. If we deal with them one by one, then Sonia. So just in terms of the specialist equipment for young people, obviously that has no implication for the young people who require specialist equipment. We have a budget for that currently. It's a very modest budget, to be fair. We have ALN grants at the moment from Welsh Government, so purchasing that equipment from grant is entirely eligible in terms of the grant conditions. So that proposal for next year is to fund that from the ALN grant and to obviously remove the cost from the core budget, hence the saving in the revenue budget. So but there's no implication for the young person. The main thing is they get the specialist equipment, and where it's funded from is really of no concern to the family and the young person for obvious reasons. That's our concern.
So presumably that's what's happening with all of the grants going down that section down to LL12.
Yes, certainly in terms of the local authority education grant, we will be substituting grant spend for core spend. And similarly with L12, the governance unit is different. There'll be an increased charge. There'll be get full cost recovery from schools for the professional clerk service. Obviously, not all schools buy into that, so that's a choice for schools. But where they do, we will initiate a modest increase so that we've got full cost recovery.
Okay. Again, my concern around those grants is that there are other things. What were the grants given for? What would they have been spent on in addition to core if we weren't doing this? What are we losing, Andrew, in this arrangement?
There is obviously, depending on which grant you're referring to, but the principle is the same for all of them, Sonia. We are losing the opportunity cost to spend that money on other things which the grants are intended for. So we're not suggesting doing anything which is not compliant with the grant conditions, but so we're suggesting using grant instead of core. Obviously, there is an opportunity cost, so there'll be less funding from core on those things which the grants were provided for, whether it be additional learning needs or education improvement. They're modest reductions because some of those are quite large grants, but nevertheless, I'm not going to sit here and say there isn't a knock-on opportunity cost. Of course there is, because we're substituted core spend for budget, for grant.
Thank you. So effectively, we're cutting from what we could be doing. Yeah.
To balance the budgets, that's right.
Yeah. Right, I'm going down my list here. One of the big things that we are moving over the 3-year process with is the LL16 at the bottom of that section, which is the second year of the phased recharge of cleaning costs. Are we aware of any impacts from last year? Did any of the schools leave our cleaning service? Were there any reductions in cleaning provision, etc., as a result of that?
None, Councillor Reynolds. No school. It's clearly not one of the more popular sort of suggestions with schools, because obviously it's an increase of cost to the schools. but I think, you know, everybody accepts that the cleaning services is a really, really high standard. They provide excellent value for money. It is something that, you know, we're mindful of when we're putting together these proposals, that, you know, schools' budgets are under pressure, and, you know, there's a proposal in there to in this set of proposals to sort of address some of the pressures there. But no one's left the cleaning service as a result of this budget proposal. And as you quite rightly point out, Sonia, this is the second year of a 3-year proposal. So probably if somebody was going to leave by now, they would have.
Thank you, Andrew. Right. Going on to sorry, it's too much. I've got too many notes on this. See, if you print things off, you go into them in much more detail than if you stare at the screen. And as I was traveling at the time, I was printing things off. I wanted to go into the savings and income generations proposals in Appendix 4. I wondered overall whether these were realistic in their, you know, in their provision, and I also and I'm trying to find it where the proposal was on the homeschool transport and the fact that there is an increased pressure on that. Sorry, that's not from a different section of the report. Increased pressure on that of a rather large amount, and wondering what the thoughts are about how we can deal with that going forward. I understand there's a workshop on March 17th for the Education Scrutiny Committee that will be looking at the forward proposals for that, but that I have concerns about that continuing rise in costs.
Sorry, could you sort of direct where we in Appendix 3?
Sorry, it's Appendix 3 because I got my papers muddled slightly. And it's homeschool transport.
It's the reinstatement of the £1 million, Andrew, on home to school transport. So it's the £750,000 that we took out to the budget in this year on the anticipated savings of the external contract, which haven't been delivered. So that's putting it back in the budget, and then it's addressing a £250,000 in-year pressure that we got this year. I think what Sonia's asking is, what are the plans going forward around what we're doing on home to school transport? I'm conscious Lloyd Wynn is not here, who's leading that review, but wonder whether you want to just give a flavour as to the sort of things that we've recently agreed in terms of additional staffing internally to look at that.
Yeah, certainly. As you say, Lloyd Wynn's leading that that group, but you know, he gave us a presentation on recently. So I think the workshop in March, Sonia, is to take members through the revised home to school transport policy, because there's a required and proposed revision to the current policy. So I think it's important that members understand why and what is going to be proposed. I think very much the work of the board that Niall Wynn chairs, it's more about cost avoidance going forward. You're absolutely right. You say you're worried about the cost of transport. You know, I equally share those concerns. At the moment, costs are only going one way, and that's up, and that's that's a national picture. The working group does pick up currently around provisions, and are our provisions in the right place in terms of ALN, and would it be possible to do anything differently which might reduce the cost of transport and make it better for young people going forward, and which is probably actually the wrong way around. Make it better for young people, and then make the cost of transport less. We've had some investment from corporate body to increase our travel trainer provision. So I think the meeting in March will be an important one for members to attend, so that they can understand the full extent of what the council is trying to do to reduce costs, but also sort of reduce the likelihood of costs going up exponentially in the future. I think there's something like, well, it's between 90 and 100 contracts coming to an end this year, there's a real risk that when those attended, cost will go up significantly, because that's what the market is telling us at the moment.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll look forward to that workshop, but it would be really good for that scrutiny committee to have a conversation about home to school transport. It's been problematic recently because of recent history, and it would be really useful to have that conversation and be, have extreme detail about that pressure and that, how things are going forward.
Yeah, that me, Chair, thank you, would be in keeping with our corporate objective of the best start in life. I can't see that if parents have to walk children considerable distances to get to school, how that is considered to be fitting in with that best start in life aim. So I think when that does come to committee, I think that should be foremost in people's minds as well.
Thank you, Ms. Madsen. Councillor, is there any questions?
No.
Thank you for your questions, members. Thank you for your responses, officers, as well. I can't see any further. Councillor Thomas, do you want to come in for the last question?
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to come back to what Councillor Wood was saying at the beginning, and kind of in response to what Nicola was saying as well. When it comes to people being confused about a lower level of connection, I think that really comes down to clear communication. And we could even give an example on the website of, like, each chair counts as a separate item and they are separate to a table. That would be a way of explaining it. I think when you get more murky situations, like when you've got a bed base that is in two parts, like, in my opinion, that's a single item. It doesn't matter if it's in two parts, but I mean, it's designed to attach. But I think we could do a smaller item collection, but we just need to be clearer on the communication, and then if people complain, well, that's people trying to take advantage of a situation, isn't it? And that's something I'm sure we deal with all the time. Could we come back to that and get some agreement from the committee to ensure that is definitely included in these notes that are going back? Because I do think that, I've got a lot of households in my ward that can't afford the 7 collections, and they just need one item taken away. They don't have a car, they've got no way of getting it anywhere. So, and it does end up going to, unprofessional traders that end up tipping it somewhere, which again ends up costing the authority. If you were to then trace that item somehow to the resident, I mean, it's not strictly speaking the resident's fault at that point. It's the trader that you need to target. So I think there are issues with that, and we should perhaps look at having a smaller item collection. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yeah, we also have to take, not take away the responsibility of the homeowner as well. Making sure that they do get somebody that has a waste carrier's license to ensure it isn't going to be dumped further on down the line. But yeah, all the questions that have been raised today, Councillor Thomas, are being taken forward to respective cabinet members. Then we got Deputy Leader Councillor Llewellyn would like to come in. Councillor Llewellyn.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I noticed that Nicola had her hand raised. I don't know if she was going to reply to that specific question before I say something, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Nicola, do you want to come in before Councillor Llewellyn?
I was going to say exactly what you said, Chair, in terms of the homeowner having a responsibility to ensure that they pay a registered waste carrier rather than paying somebody who is not registered and may well be disposing of it inappropriately, because it is the householder's responsibility. And when we are successful in tracking back the waste, if there is evidence of where it came from, unfortunately it is that household who is also taken to court for the actions that they are responsible for. So it is everybody's interest to ensure that they do use a registered waste carrier if they choose not to use the council service.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nicola. Councillor Llewellyn then, please.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr. Thanks, Chair. I'm substituting here today for Councillor Steve Hunt, the leader of the council, who's at a social services meeting or event today. So just to say briefly, Chair, that thanks for all the questions this afternoon. They are all relevant and they will be considered when they're collated and sent through to the relevant cabinet members. And the cabinet collectively before sort of final reports come back. Obviously, we will have to deliver a balanced budget. That's an obligation on us, and we also have to consider, you know, practical and operational issues as well. But you know, all the points will be considered. We've heard this afternoon of a large number of pressures, and including, you know, references made to the historical lack of maintenance in our assets, which we are trying to address and turn around as a current administration, and as a current, as we've heard this afternoon, as a current scrutiny committee. The proposals overall, I think, are progressive, including an additional £7 million investment into schools' delegated budget, specifically to support additional learning needs provisions. And also there are measures there to protect social care, the most vulnerable people in our communities, and to tackle homelessness. And you know, we also see a range of other new strategies and initiatives included in the document overall. At the end of the process, we'll also, of course, have to decide the level of council tax after taking all the scrutiny and consultation on board. We, along with other councils, we and the WLGA, we continue to press for further funding for Neath, Talbot, and all of the local authorities. For this year, just to note that I'm pleased that the agreement between Plaid Cymru and the Welsh Government ensured a 4.5% uplift in the local government settlement, compared with the 2.5%.
I'm sorry, point of order. Point of order.
For the Talbot, it means.
Councillor Lennon, can I hold you there?
Yeah.
Can I hold you there? We've had an objection in the room from Councillor Reynolds.
As a member of this committee, this is a scrutiny committee, and you know, it's not for major statements from cabinet members. This is grandstanding. Sorry.
Well, Chair, if I may, I'm responding to the debate that's taken place and putting in context the way we will need to consider all the relevant points that have been raised by scrutiny this afternoon. I will just conclude very quickly. Obviously, included in the report is a proposal which will have to be considered at full council for a 3.5% uplift in the council tax, which is considerably lower than the 10% we thought we were facing at one stage. And you know, so it's a progressive outcome of that particular agreement that I just referred to. But obviously, all these points will have to be considered during the rest of the consultation process, and of course before a full report is brought to council in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon.
I do think that, you know, we need to stick to the form of scrutiny in a scrutiny committee if that's the way it's going to be, and certain other things are for council statements. My view would be that I didn't raise the 7 million. The 7 million going into schools is insufficient to meet the current pressures there. And it's been enabled by the fact that we have had a good settlement from the Labour government. So, you know, we have that sort of thing to consider. So please, can we stick to scrutiny and scrutiny if that's the rule? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your observations, Councillor Reynolds. I can't see any further questions online, no further questions in the room. So members, I'm going to ask you to note the report. Thank you. And move on to agenda item 4, which is the draft capital programme 2026 to 2029. These can be found on pages 39 to 60 on your agenda packs. Members, officers, any further to add to the reports, please?
Just to say, Chair, that this is a draft of the capital programme report that will be considered in March. So it's work in progress, but I don't expect any fundamental changes between now and when the final report is presented, Chair. So happy to take questions. Sure.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions on agenda item 4, please? Councillor Percy?
Yeah, David, thanks, Chair. Just two more general comments and questions to begin with. In terms of Appendix 1 and the strategy, and looking at page 52, there's reference there to reviewing of the methodology for capital allocations, you know, prioritisation matrix, etc. You know, just to say, and we look forward to seeing that. And you know, I know I've been pushing really for sort of more transparency and discussion on the capital programme. So I do welcome that it was included in today's scrutiny session, and I think we can get our teeth into that prioritisation work in due course. but one thing I just wanted to touch on in terms of kind of openness and transparency around the capital planning process throughout the year as well, because as members know, this document isn't sort of fixed, is it? You know, it gets updated throughout the year as things emerge, funding emerges, developments proceed, and obviously the capital programme steering group meets and makes a lot of decisions and discussions around the capital programme. I just wonder if there's a way to interface the steering group and members, whether that's through minutes or some sort of engagement, because that feels like a bit of an abstract concept to us. As someone who's been here now for over 8 years, I don't really fully understand that process. So it's just a general point to start with, Chair, around whether there's just something we could do around that would just give us a little bit more of an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes in terms of pulling together the capital programme. I'm sure prioritisation matrix is going to help, but I don't really fully understand the capital programme steering group situation. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Who's going to come in for you for that?
So two things there, Councillor Percy. So the first one, in terms of prioritisation, we have been waiting for the Audit Wales, All Wales report on capital planning. It was due back in the summer of last year. It was issued on Monday of this week, so too late to influence the process for next year. But we'll be certainly taking that on board in terms of the recommendations that they put forward, and again, working with the Scrutiny Committee to develop that. The Capital Programme Steering Group doesn't have any decision-making powers at all. So the main focus of the Capital Programme Steering Group is to monitor the progress of the delivery of the programme approved by members. It also considers requests for funding from the Council's contingency capital budget, but all of those are included in the quarterly reports that are approved by members. So all decision making is through the Cabinet. CPSG does not just make any decisions at all. It would make recommendations to the senior leadership team and then forward into the quarterly reports, but there's no decision making taken by officers in the Capital Programme Steering Group. And I'm happy to share the terms of reference of that group with this committee, if that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Percy, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I mean, you picked up on perhaps another question I was going to have around the capital contingency, and I suppose I wasn't really aware that the steering group kind of took requests and considered requests for that contingency pot. So that it explains what I was going to ask, further on down the line. Maybe that just underlines a little bit around us demystifying some of this process. I'm sure officers understand it a lot better than we do, because we don't sit in those rooms and are not party to those discussions. But I appreciate the clarity that there are no decisions being made, but I'm sure you can appreciate if there's discussion happening around prioritisation of projects and making the case for something from that contingency budget, that there does need to be some sort of reporting mechanism there beyond it appearing as a line in the budget. So I just... Yeah.
But if I come in there, Sean, would it be helpful going forward then within those quarterly reports, whether specifically I included a paragraph in the narrative report around what's been proposed for members to agree around use of contingency, as opposed to things potentially being included within the appended tables, and then maybe members not being able to have full visibility and transparency about that?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful just to demark those things and understand actually what, yeah, because some things, of course, are subject to other decisions, aren't they? You know, a cabinet report comes and something goes into the capital programme. So I think that, yeah, that's a helpful suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Chair, you okay for me to ask a couple more questions now?
Yeah, please, Sean.
There we are, brilliant. I'm just going to move on to Appendix 2 then, and it's just a few specific questions on some of the proposals in there. Nicola's actually covered off the Crown Packaging metal box line for me already, which is great. In terms of placemaking 5 property development grants, is that the commercial property grant as we have delivered over many years? Is that a continuation of that programme? I just wanted some clarity on that. And then on another point of clarity on specific item, there's public realm boots is put in the item over 2 financial years. I'm assuming that's something to do with Neath. I'm not sure what that relates to. I think that would be just useful clarity. And then I've got one last point then for Hugh, maybe specifically, which perhaps I'll come back to.
Okay, perhaps I'll just ask Nicola if she can cover those off. Councillor Percy or not, again, we'll circle it afterwards. So, Nicola, are you able to answer Councillor Percy's?
In terms of Pride in Place grants, they are linked to Transforming Towns funding, which is linked to the place plans that members are eagerly waiting to see and sign off or adopt if you're minded to do so. So those funds are linked to that. So we have to provide an element of match funding from the council's funding pot. So that's what that is. What was the other one? Sorry, I was frantically trying to look for the line in the appendix when you were talking, and I know there were 2 items you indicated.
It was public realm.
Page 58.
Page 58.
Page 58, the last line, I think is to do with visible improvements to the Boots building, which we own in Neath, Nicola.
Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, the Boots. Yeah, it is. It's to undertake works to try. We're obviously trying to invest in our town centres to make them places where people are encouraged to spend longer dwell time and supporting the traders. And we see that the Boots building is a particularly unattractive building within a very prominent position now that we've developed the leisure stroke retail offer opposite. We've got quite a wide area of public realm between the buildings, and that exposes that side elevation even more. So we'd like to undertake a piece of work to try and improve the appearance of that building, to try and make it a more attractive place to spend further time spending money in our town centres.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, that's very welcome in terms of the Boots building. I've long been nagging around that specific one. I quite like the building, to be honest. It just needs a bit of TLC, a bit of cleaning and a little bit of love, and I'm sure it'll look a lot better. So I look forward to seeing those proposals. It is something that I've certainly been keen to see. Just then, coming back to Hugh, in terms of some of the lines in the budget, in the papers, we got page 46 and page 59, and there's 2 tables there that I've got slightly different numbers on. So, for example, income generation allocations are different between those 2 tables. Can you help me out a little bit there if I'm getting a little bit confused? So I was curious about that, but then more specifically on the income generation allocations, I was just wondering what the thinking is behind that at the moment. I know we'd put money aside for income generation proposals in the past, and not really got it off the ground. So I was wondering if we had a new sort of process in place or a new project to kind of push that forward. Yeah.
I'd have to come back to you as to why it says £250,000 in one table and nothing on the other. And my colleague who would know is not on the call because she'd have to go to a hospital appointment. So I'll come back to you to committee members on that. In terms of the funding, it's just there really for any sort of small scale capital proposals where officers think that investment could generate, obviously, as the name suggests, additional income. So it's on a sort of a business case basis. There hasn't been much traction to date, but we're still trying to set some money aside in case, probably particularly more in the leisure sector as well, culture, heritage, tourism. There are bits and pieces that can be done, so as I say, for small capital investments that would help the revenue budget.
Happy with the response, Councillor Percy?
Yeah, just one brief point to Hugh. Yeah, for this financial year it's showing 0. For the next one it's showing £500,000 and 250, and there's a little discrepancy with the highways engineering figure as well. So I just wasn't sure if I'd missed where the one table is saying something different to the other, but that's something I'm sure you can pick up before the full council meeting. That's it for my questions now, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Are there any further questions from members for officers, please? No. Thank you. The recommendation is on page 40 of the agenda. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please?
A second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilford. Members, can you indicate if you wish to abstain from the vote, please?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I see no indication of the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. So moving on to agenda item 5, is there any urgent items at the discretion of the chairperson pursuant to sections 100BA 6B of the Local Government Act of 1972 as amended? There are no urgent items. Can I thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, members in the room and online, and officers, thank you for your responses to questions.